сегодня, конечно. Место удачное.
Добрый день всем. Вы меня слышите?
Алло.
Надо немножко, наверное, звук проверить. Что-нибудь все скажите.
Я слышу.
Отлично.
Казахстан на связи, все в порядке, звук отличный.
Отлично, спасибо.
И как я хочу в Казахстан.
А мы хотим Украину.
Сейчас к нам еще Россия подключится и будет вообще все замечательно. И тогда все. Так.
В Казахстане тепло?
Казахстан большой и разный. В Алмате прекрасно, 25 градусов. Дождики весенние, очень тепло, комфортно.
Прикольно.
Одна проблема, в горы сильно не пускают, за город тоже. В степь хотим поехать, в горы хотим поехать. Лететь никуда не можем, ехать в принципе тоже.
В горы за грибами или на лыжах кататься?
За грибами, да, лыжи уже сезон закончился. А грибы пошли разные. Если интересно, вам потом расскажу.
Запрещенные есть?
Запрещенные мало. Поганок мало. В основном интересные. Степные грибы есть. Различные другие. Очень хорошие. Ну, в общем, весь сезон у нас грибы, начиная с середины апреля, заканчивая сентябрем. Разновидностей 10, наверное, и каждый свой сезон.
У нас дождей столько, что должны быть грибы, но, правда, очень холодно. Поэтому я вчера ходил на огород, у меня даже кукуруза померзла.
Ну, учитывая, что вчера снег даже кое-где был, поэтому...
В Днепропетровске?
Нет, в Днепре не было снега, было всего лишь +3.
Ну, у меня кукуруза...
Добрый день всем.
Добрый день.
Здрасте.
Добрый день. У всех звук отличный. Мы сейчас ждем, пока к нам начинают потихоньку подключаться, и мы где-то в 3 начнем конференцию. Смотрите, у меня объявление для наших спикеров. Вчера мы уже и с Олегом общались, и со всеми. Мы будем делать так, когда выступают, то есть только спикеры могут включать себе звук и видео. Когда выступает кто-то из нас, из спикеров, все остальные отключаются, чтобы просто не мелькало, и вам было удобно смотреть презентацию и слушать. Хорошо? Я думаю, все знают, где выключать и включать левый нижний угол, там выключить звук и остановить видео. Это свое собственное можно останавливать. Угу. Будет тогда удобненько.
А вопросы-ответы после каждого выступления или вот там общий?
Смотрите, я буду смотреть, то есть у нас просто с вами, например, презентация, у меня Украина, Россия, потом у вас Россия, то есть я буду смотреть по вопросам. Если что-то вдруг будет такое, которое вот надо прямо сейчас, то я, может быть, отвечу. Вообще, в идеале, конечно, после всех. Потому что если мы вот так на каждого спикера, то мы можем затянуть часа на 3-4, а то и более. Не знаю, как у нас народ. Я еще предложила, конечно, отключить чат для других, чтобы не писали друг другу, а то это тоже очень сильно сбивает. Участники начинают подсоединяться, я так понимаю, потихонечку. Но у нас еще время есть. Как минимум 10 минут у нас есть. У каждого презентация будет или нет? Ну, Олега я вчера видела презентацию. Андрей, у вас будет презентация?
У меня, да, есть презентация.
Отлично, замечательно.
Я презентую всего 3 слайда, очень коротко. постараюсь информативно. Первую масштабность Казахстана относительно наших партнеров.
Александр, вы, наверное, или чуть-чуть ближе к микрофону, потому что вас...
Не очень хорошо слышно.
Да, или сделать в микрофоне, там есть такая штучка в свойствах можно. Что у нас делает APK On?
Посмотрим. Звук микрофона.
А участникам, я так понимаю, у нас же там очень много англоговорящих. Сейчас я посмотрю. Так.
Он как в системе. Очень слабо слышно.
Language of the conference will be English for all speakers, I just remind. Okay, it will start at 3 p.m. in 8 minutes. So in 8 minutes we will talk only in English.
Давай.
Okay, perfect.
Да, Ирина, так. Ну и кто-то сейчас у вас идет демонстрация экрана, да? Потом даете слово и...
Да, и вы демонстрируете, я даю слово, а вы демонстрируете уже свой экран. Сейчас вот нам надо сказать, чтобы... Окей.
Так, хорошо.
Запись участникам, конечно же, будет по запросу. Мы, в принципе, все, кто захочет, мы вышлем, просто, вы же понимаете, 3 часа или там 2,5, сколько у нас будет конференция, кому нужно, мы вышлем ссылку, вы запросто сможете скачать. Это я отвечаю на вопрос, который задали участники.
А можно еще раз мой звук проверить, насколько меня слышно?
Слышно хорошо. Сейчас получше слышно, да.
Еще громче надо?
Нет,
Да,
нормально.
Каждый индивидуально уже звук себе поставит.
Хорошо, это так, пока выключаю видео и звук, и через
Да,
3
можно
минуты
выключить
подойдем.
пока, а в 3 часа, в принципе, подключимся. Все отлично. Я пока буду здесь висеть, сейчас мы...
Сейчас попробуем. Я тоже так же, да, моя презентация точно?
Да. Закрывайте только двери, чтобы мы не бегали по 10 раз. Уже скоро начало.
Ира, привет. Проверка связи.
Привет. У нас... Мы уже все проверили, Юлечка, и через
Ну,
5
меня
минут...
слышно хорошо?
Отлично. Хорошо слышно?
Да.
Все хорошо. Hello, everyone. We just have for today around 50 persons, but we are waiting for more because more than 200 delegates have been registered for this conference. We will start in 5 minutes. If you have any questions, you see here questions and answers. You can write there your questions in English, if possible, because the language of the conference is English.
Все, начинаем. Я снимаю, пока презентажку не...
I'm here, and I hope everyone is also here. We have some speakers here with us. APK Inform is continuing a series of online conferences. Welcome everyone, welcome our speakers. I do hope more people will join us. A bit later, I see that only 66. Oh, now it's increasing the number of delegates, and I do hope we will have more. And the language of our conference is English, as I have already told you, and you may know it. APK Inform continues a series of online conferences on grains and oilseeds markets, gathering the leading experts. You know, we live in such time when countries are restricting exports, fearing for food security, and the weather makes analysts' focus forever remain just focus. Every analyst know about this. Now you see that in your screen, you see our online conferences, you see our APK Inform YouTube channel, and I will tell you a bit more about our future online events and even not online. We do hope, everyone is hoping that we will open the market face-to-face communications, not only in online, because it's not so easy to communicate for 2 months only in online in such lockdown period. For us, it's like a big, maybe not a problem, because we are an informational agency. We are in connect with the whole world, not only in online, but also in our conferences, in our periodicals. And you can see here some presentations of our, as I just tell you, channels, everything. The key points of our event are early planting campaign and fast pace of greenfield work in Ukraine and Russia, and regular weather anomalies, planting campaign in lockdown period, unfavorable pricing environment, the risk of restrictions of export in Ukraine and Russia, and financial and macroeconomic risks. I would like to introduce our speakers. Our conference will be divided in 3 parts. The first part will be about major grain crops in Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan. We will have speakers from APK Inform and from On, and from Kazakhstan, from VKZ Agro. And also then we will have a speaker, our independent analyst and expert, Oleg Lepchenko. He will tell us about impact of crop focus on grain, on price trends. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone who is now attending our online conference, because you know, it's not so easy to attend it from the different parts of the world. Okay, maybe we will wait 1-2 minutes to start my presentation. I will ask our speakers to maybe, yes, to leave me alone in the video. I do hope you understand what I mean. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Now I'm starting my presentation. It will be, okay, let it do, because it's my first time as a moderator. I hope my presentation in demonstration. I will, is it okay? I hope so. Okay. Okay, let's start. My presentation will be devoted to the harvest 2020 in Ukraine and Russia. As I have already told you, focusing in 2020 is so difficult because of this pandemic of COVID-19 and also unstable weather conditions. First, I will tell you some words about Ukraine, because our agency is located in Ukraine exactly, and the first country we'll talk about it will be Ukraine. If we talk about Harvest 2020, exactly impact factors, the main factors affecting formation. I'm so sorry. Oh, yes, it's okay now. It's just, you know, a lady and a techniques is like something special, as men say. Okay, now repeat again. As for Harvest 2020 impact factors, I can highlight the following: the marginality of cultivation of a particular crop, climatic anomalies, unstable weather conditions, planting campaign under quarantine conditions, exactly in lockdown period, volatility of the national currency, and we can tell about this volatility not only about Ukraine, but also about Russia. I will tell about it a bit later. Also, the introduction of quarantine exactly in Ukraine and the whole world had an impact on the availability of material and technical resources. As for grain export, lockdown caused regulation of shipments for wheat and the ban of on export of buckwheat in Ukraine, as well as on the availability of high quality seeds material, both exactly for domestic and foreign selection. If we talk about winter grains, as you know, winter grains play a significant role in future harvest. For example, in Ukraine, they take about 50% in whole planting. And as for harvesting, it take about 40–45%. If we talk about winter grains conditions exactly in Ukraine, we have to remind you that farmers had to seed in almost dry soil, exactly from late August to late October. It was lack of precipitations in all regions of Ukraine. As for wintering, abnormal warm weather caused favorable conditions, favorable development of winter grains, but at the same time, due to this favorable winter, such conditions caused diseases in sowings. And also now we see that weather in the whole Ukraine caused much, not only diseases, but much hail, much rain in some regions. It means, you know, as our analysts called it, like inequality in the whole country, because in some areas we see many rains and other areas we see just only dry weather conditions. I will tell you a bit more about precipitations and the whole regions in Ukraine a bit later. As you can see in this slide, in 2020, the area under winter and spring crops in Ukraine, exactly in 2020, is about 15 million hectares. Here, I will show you 7.6 million hectares under winter crops and 7.4 million hectares under spring crops. a bit decrease we see this year. Maybe you know that APK Inform is holding not only conferences, but we are also making such interviews, such polls of farmers in Ukraine and Russia. And we have such a department here in APK Inform. We have a face-to-face interview of farmers from all regions of Ukraine. We made such a poll in spring. The first poll was done in the second part of March, and it showed us that after wintering, crop condition was like 92% of wheat sowings were in good and satisfactory conditions. Barley, it was about 84%, and some bad conditions for wheat, about 8% of wheat sowings were in bad conditions and they were damaged. And as for barley, it's just 16%. After April frost in Ukraine, when some regions of Ukraine saw even snow, we got 40% of winter wheat sowings damaged, 50% of winter barley damaged, and 6% of spring barley damaged. But with the hope for crops recovering, it is high probability of such recovering because of better weather now. Well, as for dynamics of planting campaign of spring crops, the pace of barley sowing this year is lower than a year ago. Again, just look at this slide. Look at this barley spring barley planting campaign. You see here a bit decrease if to compare with 2018. For example, as of March 19, Ukrainian farmers just planted around 366 hectares of spring barley, and last year at the same date they planted more than 400. The same as for April 9th, the same as for the end of April. Our Ukrainian farmers planted a bit more than 1 million hectares of barley, but in 2019, it was about 1.5 million hectares. As for the corn planting campaign, it's very interesting situation this year. The planting campaign of corn has started very early. It has started at the second part of March. As of March 19th, our farmers planted around 600 hectares of corn. Last year, nothing. So we see very early start of corn planting campaign, just the second decade of March. So as I told you that I will just stop at some map of precipitations and some weather conditions in Ukraine, we can divide our map for three. First decade of March showed us lack of precipitations in most regions of Ukraine. Only in the western part of the country and some northern regions, the precipitation level exceeded the norm. The first decade of April was characterized by almost absence of precipitation in the whole Ukraine. In the third decade of April and the last 10 days of April, an excess of precipitations was observed in Zhytomyr, Kyiv, and Chernigov regions, as well as in some parts of Cherkasy, Vinnytsia, and Khmelnytsky regions. In other regions, precipitation was absent or just much lower than the normal. As for moisture level in the soil, necessary for the growth and development of plants, in the first 10 days of March, we could see a sufficient level throughout the country. Only in Odessa region, this indicator was below normal. In the first decade of April was just insufficient moisture level in the upper layers of soil in the territory of Odessa, Kherson, Vinnytsia, Mykolaiv, and Kirovograd regions. At the end of April, a small amount of moisture was recorded in the soil in the southern part of Ukraine, as well as some territories of Lutsk, Rivne, and Zhytomyr Oblast. So, thus in Ukraine, a high and even distribution of precipitation and moisture reserves has formed. As a result, we see a high risk for formation of different local places, both with dry conditions, as I told you before, like an inequality. Some regions have dry conditions, other regions has excess of rainfalls, exactly some hail in key regions of cultivation. For example, if just yesterday we had information that some regions of Ukraine had snow and -1 or -2 in Dnipro, for example. Yesterday it was like only around +3 in the morning, and everyone was asking in our office, is it May? Sure. Are you sure that it's May? Because it's not so easy to understand that in May we can see +3 degrees, and it's May, not early May, it's just the middle of the May. And I do hope that we will have warm weather next week, because everyone is missing this warm weather. For example, as I told you before, this Kyiv, Chernihiv, Vinnytsia, Khmelnytsky region, we traditionally observe their average grain yield close to maximum and intensive rainfall. It may affect the harvested area and development, for sure, of diseases and some pests. At the same time, in Odessa region, traditionally there are concentrated maximum share of areas under grains, some maximum sowings of grains. We observed this year again dry weather conditions. Everything, all these facts cause decrease in production. In addition to the weather conditions, weather factor, an important component of focus, every analyst knows it, and also trader for sure, economic background. Volatility of the national currency in Ukraine has been formed. On the one hand, they formed a decrease in marginality of production and sale of grains and pulses. On the other hand, caused an increase in production costs in formation of the future crop. The next slide showing you prices from April 2019 up to April 2020. Lower prices for major milling and feed grains. We talk now about milling wheat, feed barley, and feed corn. Low prices affected decrease in number of working capital exactly needed for planting campaign of Ukrainian farmers. According to the focus of APK On analysts, the harvest of grains and pulses production exactly in Ukraine in this year, it is estimated at around 68.7 million tons. It shows us 9% decrease from the previous year, when we got more than 75 million tons of grain production. At the same time, taking into account the current weather conditions, the average yield is expected to reach more than 47 centner per hectare. It is only 4% lower than it was a year ago. All these all these figures can be shown in the focus of APK On analysts. They are demonstrated in our monthly reports. I will tell you about them a bit later. Again, wheat yield may decrease by 13% if to compare to the previous year, and due to reduction of sown areas under this grain by 4%, as well as a decrease in its yield due to prevailing weather conditions. The planting area under barley will also significantly decrease in 2020 to 2.2 million hectares. It shows us 16% decrease in planting areas. And at the same time, gross crop of this culture is projected at 6.8 million tons, 23 minus 23 in production, and yield at the level of 32 centenar per hectare. Corn harvest may total around 35.1 million tons, also some decrease around 2% if to compare with the previous season. Okay, now you see the slide of our region. Maybe you know that head office of APK On is in Dnipro, not in Kyiv. You know, Kyiv is the capital of Ukraine, but in Dnipro we tell that our city is not the first, but not the second. That's why we're here. All the fields with grains and oils, not all, but many of them, are around us. When I look from my window to the fields, I just see, last year it was rapeseed, this year it is wheat. These pictures were made by our analysts last week. You can see here some winter, some wheat, some corn, and when we just look at these fields, we cannot tell that something terrible happening with fields in Ukraine. And we hope that in Ukraine, weather will become much more better now. Without any snow in June, I suppose we will not see any snow in June, and we will see a good harvest, and our farmers will be happy to have such harvest in Ukraine. And as you saw in our forecast, that yes, it's just a bit decrease if to compare with 2019, but if to compare with the average level, everything is okay. We will have harvest. We will have wheat and barley and corn in Ukraine this year. Okay, now move on to what is happening? To the second country. I'm sorry. It's about Russia. I will just stop a bit in some focus of Russian grains, and will give a word to another speaker. He will explain more maybe than me about Russia, because he will tell exactly from the country inside. The first slide is showing us prices. The same situation you see like in Ukraine. Price volatility affects formation of a new crop in Russia. Since February, export prices for major grains have been declining. They exactly decreased in line with the global trends and some uncertainty in foreign trade during the lockdown period, as in the whole world. At the same time, if we talk about domestic prices in Russia, we do not observe here a bearish trend. In March-April period, it was even a rise in prices for grains. All this allowed farmers to generate large revenue in the national currency, selling the harvest of the previous year. Compensation in price dynamics became possible due to the devaluation of the national currency under the influence of macroeconomic factors. If to compare with the April 2019, the ruble devaluation totaled 25%. But in addition to the possibility of obtaining greater revenue for farmers, this contributes to an increase in production costs in segment of imported resources. The weather factor remains key in crop formation in Russia too. You see here in these maps that European part suffers from dry weather conditions. At the same time, in April, a cyclone formed in the far east of Russia, which has brought such precipitations as snow. According to the forecast for May, almost the whole territory of the country will see temperatures above the long-term average. Also, local regions with rainfalls below normal are found in key areas of cultivation of Russia too. Talking about the forecast of grains and pulses in 2020, exactly about impact factors, in 2020 we focused this production at the level of 125 million tons, which is a bit more than it was harvested last year. maybe a 3% increase. The average grain yield is focused at, you can see here, 27 centner per hectare, if to compare with 26.7 last year. Not so big difference. An increase in production is expected in the segments of wheat, rye, oats, buckwheat, and peas. An increase in wheat production, as I have already told, is expected, both due to slight increase in planted areas and due to higher yield. In the barley segment, on the contrary, we expect reduction in areas with stable yields and, as a result, a 5% decrease in grain production in 2020. A slight increase expected in corn segment due to projected expansion of the crop. In general, the critical influence of the main factors on the future crop has not been observed yet. But the unevenness and so-called inequality, as well as fluctuation in weather conditions in the whole country, significantly increase the risks and can lead to repeated changes in the forecast. You know, sometimes to make forecasts in advance, it's not so easy, and sometimes they are changing in the last moment, exactly after harvesting campaign. Much more changes we see than in the start, for example, of harvesting. Now I just tell you some words about our issues, because APK Inform has a department of analysts. Analysts make their focus about Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, about grains and oilseeds. We have departments working face-to-face with not only farmers or producers, but exactly with traders, exporters. You can see here that we have weekly and daily issues. Every day we're calling to companies and asking what prices they have, because everyone is asking. Exactly in lockdown period, it's not so easy to find information, good information to know about the market. Not only focus, just to know what is happening in wheat segment, or for example on barley segment, and corn, everywhere. Not only in Ukraine, but also in Russia and Kazakhstan. As you know, we have many conferences. We had, I have tell you, many conferences last year, not only in our countries, but also some foreign countries like Egypt or somewhere else. And we know all prices. If you want to be sure, to be informed about market situation, just to be keep informed, just ask us. We will send you brief information. Just you can see here some examples of our weekly reports. We have also some monthly reports with statistics, with port information. By the way, all delegates of today's online conference will get 10% discount for subscription in AgriMarket weekly and monthly and daily. I will send everyone our offer, and you will see what is it. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any just questions, just yes, I see here, just write in questions in answers. We will try to give you full answers after some presentations of our speakers. Maybe after the fourth speaker of the first session, we will make like a small talk, small answering your questions, and you will see maybe more information. You will just hear maybe more information than it was given in my presentation or in others. I would like to give a word, if I will be not in the office, but somewhere in the conference hall, I will say I would like to give a floor to our next speaker from Analytical Center Sovecon, Mr. Andrei Sizov. He is a director. Please put on, okay. And he will tell us about Russia, about grain production, his focus more. Okay, Andrei, please.
Okay, hi, I'm Andrei Sizov, editor of Sizov Report and director of APK. I was asked to talk today about our estimates of new crop, and that's what I'm going to do. A short intro. Who we're the oldest firm in the Black Sea covering agricultural market. Main focus is Russia, main focus is wheat, but we also cover other key crops and other countries in the region. I don't want to annoy you too much with our promotion, just suggest to check Sizov.report, our website in English, our service covering the Black Sea, and you can get a free trial there. So I'll start with a quick with a map of NDVI in Russia. It's a bit outdated, but I think it still gives a good idea how crops looked like and how they look like now. So here you see Russia, here's Volga Valley, nice and green NDVI. This is central black earth, mostly nice and green. And here's south, Russian south, key producing region, which is not that nice. You see a lot of gray spots here, and that more or less reflects the situation, what's happening here. After very dry, yes, it was a very warm, another warm winter, and it also was a very dry winter. And after that dry winter, we had a dry spring. As you can see here, in recent 30 days, there were a lack of precipitation, both in Russia and southern Ukraine. And south of Russia, that's a key growing and exporting region. Here's Krasnodar, here's Rostov, number 2 and number 1 wheat producers, here's Stavropol. And as you can see here, that yellow spot, which doesn't look good. And that lack of precipitation was observed after, as I said, dry, long period of dryness. The only good thing, and that helped a lot, because of warm spring, soil in south, of course, and central Russia, and even in Volga, it wasn't frozen, and that helped fields, that helped soil to digest the precipitation better compared to frozen land, because it was not run from fields, it was going into the land, and that helped a lot. And that's why it's not really a disaster, despite that dryness. Now and April, May, and early June, that's the key time for new yield potential, especially for southern Russia and southern Ukraine. And we do watch this closely. Fortunately for farmers, at the end of April, beginning of May, we started to receive rains. Some parts of Russian south received 20, 30, even 40 or 50 millimeters within a few weeks. So that was very good and very timely, because if not those rains, that would definitely disaster. But the problem is it was too late. First of all, it was too late for Stavropol, number 3 wheat producer in Russia. And as Irina mentioned, south of Russia also suffered from some frosts. So it was too late for Stavropol, number 3 producer, and also parts of Krasnodar and Rostov, key wheat crops, were also affected by dryness. So it's not really a disaster at this stage, but we would say, and in our models, we started to calculate production for different regions in different parts of Russia. In our models, we have, right now, we have estimates of yields close to trend, above average for Volga region. That's why I said that this map is still relevant. Close to average, slightly above for central Russia, and slightly below for south of Russia, below average. So just if you don't have numbers in your head, and probably you shouldn't, roughly Volga plus central Russia equals the whole south. So problems in south could be offset by a good crop in central Russia and Volga Valley. I'm talking about winter wheat now mainly. So moisture reserves, that's a key metric right now, one of key metrics. Despite that precipitation in late April, beginning of May, you can see there are still issues here. Krasnodar, it's below recent years. Rostov is close to previous years, but again below. And Stavropol, it was below, and you see that precipitation which it got just in recent weeks. But again, the damage has been done already. So low precipitation, and the point is we need some damage has been done already, and we need more rains in next 1-2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's a key time for Russian winter wheat for its yield. Voronezh, as you can see here, that's a key Russian region, central Russia. No problems with crop precipitation. We talk to farmers a lot as well. We do our surveys regularly, and they're pretty happy with crop conditions in central Russia. No problems with Kursk, that's another important region. Tambov, no problems, a bit low moisture reserves, but I think that simply doesn't reflect recent rains. I just talked to a farmer in Tambov today, and he said actually they had too much rains in recent days, and actually he's afraid they won't be able to plant some late crops like soybeans. And Volga Valley, also no problems with precipitation. Tatarstan, Saratov, no problems with precipitation. So again, south, slightly below average crops conditions. Volga and center of Russia close to average or above. So we can get a very good crop there. So this is how our estimates of winter area looks at this stage. Spring area close slightly below the previous years, 12 million hectares, and winter wheat significant growth. We expect to see that's planted area. For example, USDA reports harvested area. We expect a significant growth because we saw a significant increase of planting area at the end of the previous year. And the winter crops conditions were relatively good, way better than in previous year, and that's why we expect a significant increase of winter wheat area. Also, you can see here a long-term trend when we talk about climate change and global warming. For Russian wheat production, it was extremely beneficial. So as you can see here, in 2013, we're planting more spring wheat, and now we're planting way more winter wheat. And if you convert that into production, that's a lot, because winter wheat acreage, average winter wheat acreage, winter wheat yields are roughly 2 times higher than spring wheat ones. And also, we have those high numbers for wheat area, and that explains, we've been asked a lot about that in recent days after WASDE, that partly explains the difference between our numbers and numbers reported by USDA just recently. We have a higher area number. And while USDA traditionally, in our view, underestimates wheat area, that happened a year ago, and that happened 2 seasons ago as well. If you want to track that, you can do that just looking at different issues of WASDE. You would see that they were up in wheat area gradually month by month, and while we already have reflected that. The actual numbers on area will be available, and that's a kind of funny story. While people now look at crop size, they mainly focused on yield estimates, but they think, many of people think that the market knows well, and the officials have reported already what the actual area is, and it's not true. Actual, those are now only estimates at this stage, and actual numbers on area will be available only in summer, and before that, they're just guessing. So here's an idea. We started to calculate, we obviously calculate it differently for different regions and differently for spring wheat and winter wheat. But here's an idea where how our current estimate, average wheat yield estimate, compares to the trend. So it's slightly below the trend. The idea again is simple. Some problems in south and Volga Valley and center looks good. So we're likely to be close to average, close to trend, slightly below at this stage. So that gives us a number of wheat production of 81 million tons, significantly above the previous year and significantly above APK estimates, which you just saw, and USDA estimates. USDA said 77 million tons. Again, bear in mind that it's not really a game changer, but here you have Crimea number, while USDA doesn't reflect Crimean numbers in Russian numbers. So, and Crimea produced, last year they harvested around 1 million tons of wheat. So to compare this number to USDA, should deduct something close to 1 million. So, and for total grain production, we estimate at this stage, it's harder to predict. At this stage, we estimate 126, slightly above the previous year. In addition, so wheat is sharply up. Barley slightly down. Actually, I can give you a number. So current barley estimate is 20 million tons compared to 20.5 in the previous year. And corn is 13.3 compared to 14.3 in the previous year. So wheat significantly up, corn down, barley slightly down. That's it for now. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. And again, I do encourage you to have a look at our service and get your free trial. Thank you.
Thank you for your great presentation. Just we saw here a question, but you answered it about wheat production, about if it will be lower or not. We saw in your focus. I hope if someone will have some more questions, they will just write in questions and answers, and I will tell just loud a bit later. Thank you very much, Andrei, and I do hope everyone enjoyed your presentation. Full information about the whole weather conditions in Russia, all precipitations, and about focus and production in Russia. So just don't be so shy, just write your questions, because we have good speakers. And now the next speaker will be again from APK Inform Agency. It will be Polina Kalaida. She is the head of Foreign Trade Department of our agency. She is highly informed about Kazakhstan market. She will give you a brief information about Kazakhstan grain production situation on the market. Okay, Polina, are you ready? I hope everyone is ready.
Well,
okay. I'm giving you a big word.
So, good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to continue our today's conference main topic, the harvest of 2020. And as my workmates told you about the harvest of grains in Ukraine and Russia, I want to present you the forecast by APK Inform analysts of grain production in Kazakhstan this year. So, to begin with, we'd like to pay attention to the main factors which will influence and form the crops in Kazakhstan this year. They are, at first, diversification of the production in favor of the technical crops, the sowing campaign during quarantine, export regulation, and, of course, demand on wheat from local markets. Well, beginning with our first factor. In this year, Kazakhstan is keeping on the diversification of the sowing areas, favoring the oilseeds and transferring to the production of the high profitable crops. At the same time, due to the rather high demand on wheat from the local markets, the areas under the crop for the last three seasons remain rather stable, as you can see in my slide. Thus, the increase of the areas under technical and feed crops form the total rise of the sowing areas. Herewith, wheat and barley occupy 60% of the total areas in the country. However, this spring sowing campaign met unexpected challenges like COVID-19 pandemic. But according to the Ministry of Agriculture, the spring sowing campaign is proceeding smoothly. In some cases, the farmers reported any difficulties with crossing the block post, but in order to resolve this problem, the Ministry of Agriculture has developed the unified procedure for the movement of farmers. In particular, at the block post, both the paper documents and the electronic permissions must be considered. So, speaking of grains, in particular, we can see that the production of grain in Kazakhstan is concentrated in three oblasts: Akmola, Kostanay, and North Kazakhstan. These three oblasts occupy 80% of land for wheat and 65% for barley. So, speaking of wheat and taking into account the forecast of areas and yield, the production of wheat in this season is expected to reach 12.2 million tons, which is 6% higher than in current season result. So, speaking of barley, in this year, the planting areas in key regions can decline, which at the same time can be compensated by forecast increase of yield. However, in this year, the production of barley is forecasted at 4.1 million tons, which is 8% higher than in previous result. So, the production of barley in Kazakhstan is stimulated by two factors. At first, of course, diversification program and the strong demand of barley from the global market, including China. So, to sum up all the information, and as you can see in my last slide, the total production of grain in 2020 is expected at 18.4 million tons, which is 6% higher as opposite to previous year. But, of course, this forecast is preliminary because weather can bring drastic change, like, for example, it was last year, unfortunately. Still, the higher yield expected this year will compensate the reduction of the areas. Such combination this year will definitely need our observation. So, thank you for your attention and continue to my presentation of the next grain season in Kazakhstan. And to give you better idea about the market and about the current situation and trading, I'm honored to introduce you Alexander Malov, the General Director of VKZ Agro Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much, Paulina. I'm very glad to hear everybody. Good day. I wish everyone a good health during this time, and also all agrarian a good sowing and harvesting campaign. So in general, Paulina already explained a little bit quite well about the situation today in Kazakhstan. I want to mention a little bit from my side. So on 12th of May, we see that the sowing campaign done already for only for 12%, but it's according to the schedule. Sowing campaign is going mostly above the schedule for 5, maybe 7 days because of good weather conditions. Due to many rainfalls during winter, moisture in soil is high enough. It's 60-70 centimeters deep, which means that if we have rains in the end of May, so we believe that we will see high quality on time. It will help to save the moisture for summer period. For Kazakhstan, it's very important. We will have dry, humid summer. For now, it's too early to explain because nobody knows. Expectation from our side, sowing area for 2020 for wheat almost the same according to the previous year, and as for all the grains, so quite similar. So, but from our side, and according to the USDA report, we see that the wheat production will grow for 2 million tons, which it's 13.5 million tons. So it means that for 2 million, it's more than in the previous season, which is that. But in Kazakhstan, you know, that's to make any forecast earlier than late of summer, it's very difficult or impossible to make any prediction. Everybody knows Kazakhstan is considered like a zone of risky agriculture. So anyway, we need to wait for end of July, August to say something very stable numbers, to show stable numbers what will be in Kazakhstan. As for what we can say about sowing during quarantine, from our side, we see that from middle of April, we have many restrictions due to lockdown, but in main grain raising regions like North Kazakhstan and others, the government undertake immediate action to ease the movement. Farmers can freely move now, so the sowing campaign goes according to the schedule. The government is doing maximum support for the farmers, diesel fuels being subsidized, additional loan made to the farmers, so also issuing some forward contracts for new crop, which positively affect the sowing campaign. As a conclusion, I'd like to say that our expectations in new crop are pretty positive. Kazakhstan is doing a great job, and we hope that the climate condition will help us gain crop both good in quantity and quality. If we're talking about market situation, last 2 months was quite difficult. Since the end of March, Kazakhstan government imposed a restriction on export, first of wheat flour, then on milling wheat, and after active discussion between Grain Union of Kazakhstan and Minister of Agriculture, restrictive measures were changed to a monthly quota, which allowed to avoid full stop of export. So everybody knows that April quota was not so big, 200,000 tons of wheat and 70,000 of wheat flour. In May, it was increased to 150,000 tons of wheat and 150,000 of wheat flour. From the 1st of June, we expect that all restriction on export will be removed before arrival of new crop. So also I would like to add some presentation from my side about export and supply and demand. Just a moment, I do some numbers. So according to the supply and demand, in this season, it's still forecast because our season is going on until end of August. So, but in general, total export, we expect to have 6.5 million, including wheat flour. So for the last 3 months, we expect around 1.7 million tons, also including wheat flour. So it's not big numbers, but for Kazakhstan, it's quite well done in this season. Most of all, the production was low, but because of quite a significant import from Russia, it's 1.5 million ton. Our numbers looks very good according to the Central Asia market. Import was done not the real statistic numbers because a lot of tracks coming from Russia unofficially. It's helping to improve local statistic numbers. We are just trying to do a huge job with Grain Union against that because we are not agree that unofficially some tracks are going between Russia and Kazakhstan because we are staying in Grain Union, or not Grain Union, Custom Union together with Russia. But a lot of job and supporting now from Grain Union, from Ministry of Agriculture, we have some projects how to solve it. So, and our forecast for the new season, we expect that according to SDA, we have 2 million more production, 500,000 import, and we expected around 20-25% more export potential, around 8 million tons in new season. But again, as I told you previous, we need to wait a little bit to do some real forecast. The next slide, we are showing the export by month from Kazakhstan. You see that April, May, it was quite, numbers was really down because of quotas. As for the June, we expected the numbers will be more than last season to finish and we expect that supply will be higher because of COVID for sure, from the Central Asian countries like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and Kyrgyzstan. So all in all, it's if we are coming to my last slide, I don't want to attention more time. So in this slide, you can see the main directions of Kazakh wheat. So for sure, traditional markets, the biggest market is Uzbekistan market. Also quite a big one, it's Tajikistan market and Afghanistan. It's 3 of them, it's covering 80% of export from Kazakhstan. So, and again, like last 2-3 years, this market this year still very aggressively buying from Kazakhstan, and we believe that new season will be quite a similar situation. So in general, if you are interested, you can see that Uzbekistan is buying around 2.5 million tons, Tajikistan 1.5 million tons, and Afghanistan 1.5 million tons. It's including wheat, flour, and wheat. In general, that situation, what's going on in Kazakhstan. Thank you so much, gentlemen, ladies.
Okay, Alexander, thank you very much for such good presentation. Just be with us because we have some questions. I also would like to ask Mr. Sizov to connect to show us his video because we have some questions from our delegates. First question was yesterday, even to my email from our Egyptian delegate. He was asking about export quota for Ukraine and Russia, as for keeping the export quota because of just some talks on the market. I will check about Ukraine. For Ukraine, quotas for the export of grains and pulses have not been introduced. As you know, there is a memorandum between exporters and the government on limiting on wheat exports at the level of 20 million tons, and some restriction for export of buckwheat in Ukraine up to the 1st of July this year. There are no other conditions for a quota regime in the next season in Ukraine because harvest is predicted at a rather high level. At the same time, increasing global wheat production and increased competition in trade will regulate the exports from the country. I will just want to ask Mr. Sizov to comment on the situation in Russia about export quota and talk any possibilities in this season.
Okay, so as probably many of you know, on 31st of March, Russia introduced a 7 million tons quota for all key grains for April, June. The quota has been fully depleted by now. Exports are still being done, so traders were just filing declarations in advance. Actually, we're predicting that the government would do something like that, even we're saying about that in 2019. And actually, they tried, Minister of Agriculture tried to introduce a quota before all the COVID story, the quota in January, when they wanted to introduce a 20 million tons quota for the second half of the season. Fortunately, it wasn't approved by other ministries. Later, as I said, they introduced that quota, saying that we need stability of prices, which obviously didn't happen. And now, unfortunately for Russian farmers and Russian traders, now they say, Minister of Agriculture, they say that they want to use quota in the future again. And I assume they want to do that systematically. And I do think there is a good chance that they would try to introduce the quota again in the new season, 2021, no matter what the actual crop would be and no matter what the S&D will look like, they will try to do that. But on another hand, fortunately, it's not in their power just to introduce or cancel the quota. They again should receive approval from other ministry, from I think from, for example, Ministry of Economic Development. And I do hope and I think that it won't be approved. There's a good chance it won't be approved by Ministry of Economic Development for two and other officials. There are two main reasons. Reason number one, it clearly violates Russia's commitments as a WTO member, despite what some stuff Russia does, it still typically follows those rules. And reason number two, the key of Russian agricultural policy now is to more than double agricultural exports by 2024. And that metric is being closely watched by all ministries and by administration of the president. And that obviously any quotas or restrictions that obviously violates, it's not in line with that target. So that's why bottom line is Minister of Agriculture will try to do that. I think there's a good chance. There were a lot of speculations. I think no matter what ministry does, in reality that Russia could again do something silly. But at the end of the day, I think there is a good chance quotas won't be approved in the new season.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for such a good reply. As I asked you before, we have some questions for you again about this Crimean wheat crop. And as you told, you have no any forecast for Crimea, but please, you have some figures I saw. Maybe you can just...
Yeah, so thanks, Irina. So there is a question you mentioned. I mentioned that it should be in mind the difference in USDA, Soviet-Con, APK numbers. So Crimea obviously not a game changer. We don't have an official forecast at this stage for Crimean wheat crop. I think you should deduct or add something like 0.8 million tons, maybe 1 million tons maximum. In 2019, they harvested 1 million ton. In 2018, they harvested around 0.5 million tons. And crop conditions are not bad this year, contrary to years ago. So I think it should be slightly below 1 million. So should I read the next question?
Yes, yes, it's about
Okay,
women
so
south. Okay.
There was a question, yes, another question was, what's the chance of, can we see a Russian wheat crop below 2019 because of extremely low moisture reserves in south of Russia? At this stage, no, I don't think that 74 or below is, there is high probability of going that low is very low at this stage. For example, I think we should, to get that low, to get to something like 70 million tons, we should face very big additional issues to what we have now in south. For example, like we should receive less than 10 millimeters of precipitation in next 2-3 weeks, and I don't think it's going to happen. European models say that Russian south would get, depending on the region, from 20 to 40 millimeters of precipitation in next 2 weeks, and that's enough. And I think if we get that, we won't change our estimate for south of Russia. And at the same time, again, winter wheat crop in Volga Valley and center, they look very good and promising. I think there's a good chance we will harvest a bumper crop. Spring wheat, it's a bit early to say, but the current setup, relatively fast pace, I didn't mention that, but relatively fast pace, planting pace. Siberia has planted a lot already. I think that's a good sign. There is plenty of precipitation at this stage, and I think we can harvest a good spring winter crop as well, which is a big share of Russian crop, contrary to Ukraine. And there was also a question about crop in south. Our most recent estimate for Russian southern wheat crop at this stage is around 33 million tons compared to 32 million tons in the previous year, slightly above the previous year despite challenging weather. But at the same time, bear in mind we have a relatively high estimate for acreage in the south, and that offsets the decline in crops conditions compared to the previous year.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Alexander, maybe if you are with us, just I want to ask you also some questions you have in your, okay, hello again. You see your questions. I would like to answer again, just I will repeat the questions. If possible, just answer loudly, okay? To what % did the farmers forward contract their grain in Kazakhstan for this year's crop? And do you have any estimates of this?
According to my information, as I know that the price will be around 65,000 tenge, which in US dollar, its ex-works price is around $155 for 12.5 protein. So for the local markets, compare with last seasons, it's not bad price. It's spring price. So first of all, as I know, Food Corporation, government company, just paying some 80% of the price, and 20% will cover when the goods will be on the silos in September, October. So I think that's a good option for the farmers, because now with all the farmers have some issues with financials because of the COVID, banks problems and blah, blah, blah. So all in all, it's a good scenario for the farmers. They can use this money, and I don't believe it will be lower, quite lower than market price, which will be on September, October for new crop.
Mm-hmm. And the next question about future of oilseeds and other crops because of this reduction in wheat production. So will it?
From my side, I believe that the numbers quite similar with previous season, and the sowing campaign, according to the numbers with wheat and oils, we don't see big changes only in line seeds. We see that 20-25% the acreage will be higher. In barley a little bit lower. At the rape seeds the same. Sunflowers a little bit higher for 10-15%, but in general it looks similar to the previous season. But anyway, according to the moisture in the field, and if we have some more rains in summertime, so we expect maybe we will see the better numbers, more not the same like USDA showing now. So we will see in summer.
Mm-hmm. One more question for you. In case Russia will proceed with quota in new season, do you think that Kazakhstan will follow the same scenario?
The quota is just something new for Kazakhstan. For Russia, it's already used second time, as I know. For Kazakhstan, it's the first time, and I think we will not be comparable against Russia because we have our own markets. Central Asian markets is different from Russia, but all depends on new crop. If the new crop will be quite significant, or for sure it's not needed to use quota. If it will be just some impact for the new crop, so the crop will be lower, and we just need the export will be quite huge in the first month from September. So the government, the Minister of Agriculture, has an option to issue to start again such quota. And this quota from our side showed quite open, simple process how you can use it, how you can take it, and how you will be able to receive this quota. So in general, I believe it's not bad option if we will see bad scenario with the new crop. As for the now, we believe it's not needed in new season. We will see.
And the last question is about situation of active import of Russian wheat by Kazakhstan. Will it be repeated in the next season? And in this case, what potential volume?
It's very, very important question, and now it's under discussion between our Grain Union of Kazakhstan and Ministry of Agriculture. We cannot nobody can control this process, and for sure we don't like this because it's not officially. A lot of tracks are going through the borders. And for sure, all depends again on the situation in Russia and in Kazakhstan. Sometimes the goods can go in Russia. It depends on the year, it can come back to Kazakhstan. So all in all, we will see. But from our expectation forecast, we believe that it will be lower. So maybe 500,000, maybe close to 1 million. For sure, from that we will see some percentage, not quite open and wide tracks, not official movement of the volume. So we don't like that. Again, I would like to say.
Thank you very much for this. And also the last but not the least question to Andrei about the page of soil moisture. Have you seen it? There is some strange red line. Can you explain why?
No, actually I don't want to explain. That's a technical question. I think that's some glitch in data, but it shows a trend. So I would like to comment on previous two questions because they were also relevant to Russia. On quotas and on Kazakh imports from Russia, I think there is a pretty low chance that we would see something similar to that Kazakhstan import something about above 1 million of Russian wheat in the next season. Previous crop was pretty low, and as I mentioned, I was talking about mainly Siberia, but for Kazakhstan that's a very similar setup. I don't think at this stage Kazakhstan crop looks pretty good, and I don't think we'll see something even close to 1 million. Probably I know 500,000 maximum, I guess. And that also will depend a lot on currency fluctuations, because 1 month it makes sense to transport grain from Russia to Kazakhstan, and other months because of different foreign exchange rates, it makes sense to trade it in another direction. I'm simplifying things, but you get an idea. And about quotas, I doubt that if Russia will do something like introducing quota again, I doubt that Kazakhstan will do the same. Kazakhstan becomes more independent in its decision, and I think that's a good trend. And I mean, we just see what's happening right now. Russia introduced a quota, Ukraine didn't introduce a quota, Romania lifted the restrictions within a week. Kazakhstan introduced a quota, but now it's lifting its quota, despite Russia says that we could introduce the quota again. And I think in the new season, if Russia would say something similar, and if Russia does something similar like limiting exports, I think there's a very low chance Kazakhstan will do something similar because Russia has done it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this great session and for all answers and questions of our delegates to our speakers. Thank you very much, speakers. I would like to move.
One point.
One more?
Yeah, one.
Okay, just comment on, please.
Thank you for your
Don't go. We are not finishing. We will have another part.
Just a small comment from our side. We believe that Kazakhstan doing not the similar things as Russia, because it's a very different markets. Kazakhstan 80% markets doing to the Central Asia, and Russia doing 80% of the export to the Black Sea market. So it's 100% different markets. So it means quota came not because of Russia, it came because of balance in Kazakhstan. And that's why we will see, I agree with Andrei that if we will see the better numbers, import from Russia will be low for sure. And doesn't matter Russia will issue quota or not, we will look first on our local production. Thank you.
Yes, time will show us what will happen, yes. And I think May, June and July will show what we will see in future. Thank you very much again. Now we are, as I told you, move on to the second session of our conference. It will be devoted to the major oilseed crops in Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan. And now I would like to give the word to Julia Ivanitska. She is our key oilseed market analyst. She will tell us about the focus of APK On of oilseeds in Ukraine and Russia. Oh, do you hear me? Because I see that something happening.
I hear you well, Irina. I don't hear you. The sound is off. А меня слышно? А меня слышно?
Да.
Okay, I was told that I can start. Hello everyone, hello dear colleagues and participants. My name is Julia Ivanitska. I work at APK as oilseed market analyst for 10 years already, and I would like to present production outlook of Russia and Ukraine in 2020. And now I will turn on my presentation. Okay, so I hope everybody is hearing me well, and let's start. So in my speech, I would like to cover Russia and Ukraine oilseed production outlook in 2020. And in my agenda, It is on the screen. I will, in the first part of my presentation, I will talk about Ukraine, following by Russia. And I would like to highlight key factors of 2020 planting campaign, current planting pace and trends by oilseeds in both countries, and production forecasts, and summarize all the above. So let's start from my native country, Ukraine. Something wrong? No? Okay. So let's start from key factors of 2020 planting campaign in Ukraine. As my colleague stopped on this question, I will go through them rather quickly. So the first is winter crops acreage reduction and losses. In the fall 2019, Ukrainian farmers reduced planted acreage of winter grains by 3% year on year. Furthermore, part of them was lost due to drought conditions and April frosts. The size of losses in official reports is about 380,000 hectares, out of which 1/3 is for rapeseed. Consequently, we are observing spring acreage growth, with the main contribution coming from corn and sunflower as two profitable and drought-resistant crops. Weather factor. For Ukraine, as well as for many other countries of our climate zone, last winter was mild and almost snowless. That made marginal damage to winter crops, but lead to a lack of moisture stocks in soil. Spring also was not very rich on precipitations, which added more stress to emerging seedlings. Due to the weather factor, early start of spring sowing by 2-3 weeks on average. The last time such an early sowing campaign in Ukraine as this year was in 2014. Also, we observed spring planting campaign was started under quarantine conditions. Also difficulties it was difficult for producers, companies to make sowing plan, and there were many uncertainties with future demand and prices. And the last but not least factor, it's high instability of national currency and global oil prices. Let's start from the rapeseed. Let's move on, and I would like to make an accent that Ukraine is a rather big producer of rapeseed, especially in European part. And for those who don't know, winter rapeseed accounts for 95–98% of the total rapeseed production in Ukraine. So it was it has been already planted in fall 2019. The area was 1.3 according to official figures. That is slightly higher than previous year. Although crop area could be larger, but it was limited by soil moisture deficit. However, the harvested area is going to reduce, as we see the light orange column in this graph. According to our estimate, this year, about 120,000 hectares of winter rapeseed, or about 9% of the sown area, to be considered as lost, compared with 3–4% to previous years. The worst situation is in Odessa region, accounting for 60–70% of total losses. Some area compensation may come from spring crop of rapeseed this year, which can double to 60,000 hectares. Thus, the total area of winter and spring rapeseed is forecasted at 1.24 million hectares, which is 3% lower than last year. Let's move on to the king of Ukrainian fields, sunflower seed. As you can see in the picture, this year planting progress shows record pace. As of May 7th, Ukrainian farmers have planted 5.35 million hectares of sunflower, compared to previous year's average of 4 million hectares. That is 85% of our acreage forecast at 6.3 million hectares, which is 35% higher than in 2018. Please note on the graph more intensive planting progress in the first week of May. This is explained by favorable rains in major parts of the country. The same situation we can see in soybean seeding. The first week of May was very favorable for planting, and as of 7th of May, 943,000 hectares of soybean have been planted. That is considerably higher than last year's, the purple line, when it was 582,000 hectares. And it is in line with the level of 2017-2018. According to our optimistic scenario, the crop area of soybean will remain at the level of 2019, 1.7 million hectares. In a pessimistic version, the area can be reduced by 6% to 1.6 million hectares. And in this case, it will become minimal over the recent 7 years. Taking this into account, so far planting is completed by 55–60% out of our acreage forecast. This slide shows you our forecasts. These are average figures, and these are more rough figures. And actually not the area is, but the yield is the key parameter for the future crop, which will largely depend on productive precipitations. However, at this stage, as you see in the table, yield is, forecast of yield is almost all red. No, not almost, it's all red. And in our forecasts currently are based on the decrease in the yields of oilseeds compared to previous year, since a widespread moisture deficit limits their production potential. Positive news came from May rains, which benefited stressed crops. According to our forecast, in 2020, Ukraine will produce 22.5 to 23 million tons of oilseeds, compared to 23.1 million tons last year. In particular, for sunflower, the estimate is 15.5, in line with last year. For rapeseed, our forecast is average is 3.1, and the from 3.9 sorry, to 4.2 million tons. That is 9% or sorry, 8-10% lower than previous year. And for the soybean, our forecast is sorry, it was soybean, yeah, 3.9, 4.2, it was soybean. And for rapeseed, our forecast is 3.1 million tons. That is 8-10% lower than last year. Okay, let's move forward to Russia. And here are key factors of Russian 2020 planting campaign. Attractive prices, high demand and profitability in the oilseed sector will benefit to the development of oilseed acreage this year. Also, like in Ukraine, weather conditions were not very favorable this year, in particular low moisture level in soil, which contributed to early start of spring sowing by 2 weeks on average. At the same time, planting pace growth is somewhat limited by quarantine conditions. In particular, there were observed difficulties with passes for farmers. Also, it was noted enhanced control of the imported seed market by the official body Rossельхознадзор, that also somehow limited the progress of sowing, and also instability in national currency and oil prices. Like in Ukraine, in Russia, the current planting pace of sunflower seed is also exceeding previous years, as you see in this picture. And it's also record. As of May 12, 4.9 million hectares have been planted already, compared to previous year's average at 3.2 million hectares. That is almost 60% of our acreage forecast at 8.5 million hectares, which is almost at the level of the previous year. Soybean, as for soybean, this crop shows, in general, it shows the highest pace of acreage increase over the last decade. And it has risen from 13% out of all oilseeds in 2011 to estimated 25% in 2020, 3 times higher than 10 years ago. The growing demand from both crushing segment and export-oriented companies and attractive prices are strong drivers for soybean sector. In particular, farmers hope for continuing Chinese strong Chinese demand in the current year and in the future year. So far, 23% of the anticipated area under soybeans are planted, or 765,000 hectares, as you see. That is down from previous year's average, around 1 million hectare. This is due to the delays of plantings in the Far East when it was snow was observed. But still, we expect intensification of planting in the coming weeks, so that acreage may reach 3.3 million hectares. That is a record level and plus 8% year on year. Main increase to be seen in the Far East and European part of Russia. In contrast to Ukraine, in the rapeseed sector, the rapeseed production, spring crop is the main in Russia, accounting for up to 90% in production. But this year, winter crop share has risen to 19% from 13% year earlier. As of May 12, about 500,000 hectares of spring rapeseed have been planted, or 37% of our forecast, which is slightly lower than last year. But last year is purple line, but it exceeds the previous year's average, which was about 300,000 hectares. Final area of spring crop is forecasted to reach 1.4 million hectares. That is 3% higher year on year. And the total rapeseed area to be as much as 1.7 million hectares, which is 11% up from last year and is record level. Main increase to be seen in North Caucasian and Siberian federal districts. The production forecast for Russia in general, taking into account all the above, our outlook for Russian oilseeds production in 2020 are presented in the table and in the graph. As you can see, potential of yield and production is likely to be limited by drought weather conditions. The total harvest of 3 oilseeds is forecasted at 21.5 million tons, most likely not to exceed last year's production, including 14.6 million tons of sunflower seeds, which is 4% lower year on year. Record 4.6 million tons of soybean, which is 7% higher, and 2.3 million tons of rapeseed, which is 6% higher than last year. The lifting of restrictions for sunflower and soybean export from July 1st, 2020 in Russia and high domestic demand are likely to support the normal work of oilseed sector in the future season. And to summarize, you can see the total production of 3 main crops, oilseed crops, in Ukraine and Russia. And we can see then for sunflower, we predict a slight reduction, 2% versus 2019. For soybean, it will be in line with the last year, and for rapeseed also reduction by 3%. Despite marginal oilseed acreage growth, both in Ukraine and Russia, production is forecasted to decrease, depreciated by the lack of moisture. In general, we can say that sunflower seed balance in 2 main producers of Black Sea region, Ukraine and Russia, in the future season will be neutral. The same we can say about soybean and rapeseed sector of Russia. But for Ukraine, soybean and rapeseed reduction will be observed, and the balance will be tighter than in the current season. Also interesting thing that soybean is strengthening its position in Russia, and this year will be the first when Russian production is likely to exceed Ukraine. Slight reduction of oilseeds output in 2020 will be supportive for prices, but production volume still rather big, not to hurt industry. That is all my presentation. I will be glad to answer questions and to see your feedback. And to end up with, I would like to quote one famous old good song, Lemon Tree. Isolation is not the good for me. Isolation, I don't want to sit on a lemon tree. Now it is rather difficult and challenging time, and I wish for all of us to go through this time and to go through this time successfully, finally calm down a lemon tree and become a little bit stronger. Take care and thank you for your attention.
Okay, Julia, thank you very much for your kind presentation. Maybe now we have some questions for you, exactly because the next presentation will be about Kazakhstan oilseed market. Maybe you can see the questions regarding some prospects for linseed in Russia, if you have any figures or something, and also about some high oleic sunflower in Ukraine, any idea, and also about winter crop area, maybe some mistake or just your focus, just can you just, okay?
Yes, I see questions.
Okay.
So the first question is, are you sure that the winter crop area in Ukraine declined? The State Statistical Service indicated that it was unchanged year on year. We have State Statistics Service figures, and it shows that the area of winter wheat is down. The area of winter barley is down. Only rye is up, and the total area of winter grains is down by 3%. The rapeseed area is slightly higher, but approximately in line with last year. Maybe this participant see some not updated figures, because when they show their forecast, their first forecast, they compare it to not updated figures. But the situation is that winter crops grains were declined. To Julia, looking the area sown with sunflower, do you have idea about the percent of high oleic sunflower? Over the last years, the share of high oleic sunflower was about 5–7%, and we think that this year it will be in line with last year, and our estimate for 2019 high oleic sunflower acreage was about 400 to 450,000 hectares. So we still believe that this year it will be profitable to plant and to sell high oleic sunflower. And thank you for your presentation. What about the prospects for linseed in Russia area and production in 2020? Yes, we have forecast, but now I don't have these figures here. I will answer in this question. I will type in. Julia, what do you think about competition between Ukraine and Russia in the sunflower oil market in season 2021? Which country will be an export driver? I believe that the competition for Chinese market will be stronger next season, because experts forecast that China will reduce oilseeds byproducts import, as well as sunflower oil may reduce sunflower oil import. So the competition will be tighter. So also, if the competition will be continuing tight in Indian market, because already this season we see the sharp increase of Russian share on the Indian market. For European market, I believe that import of EU market will reduce. So it will be also a challenge for Ukraine to reach EU, but I think that there will be growth of Ukrainian exports to Middle East. And also, as Russia is key supplier of sunflower oil to Middle East, the competition also will be tighter. So that are my predictions. So could you please advise what is sunflower seed crush margin in 2021 for Russia South Federal District? APK Inform does expect. For the future season, I can't now forecast. We do not have any prices for the future season because there are many unpredictable factors. But in the current season, I can say that the margin has increased in Ukraine, and I believe in Russia too. For South Federal Districts, unfortunately, I can't say this figure. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, Julia. Thank you for your answers and your presentation. If anyone has more questions, maybe you can just write in personally to Julia, and she will write your own type in this page exactly, because we have 2 more speakers and we have limit of time. I would like to thank again Julia, and the last speaker about oilseed market will be our oilseed expert of Foreign Trade Department, Katerina Mudrian. She will tell you briefly about Kazakhstan oilseed market. And if you have any questions to her, or maybe we have also here Alexander, he is very informed about Kazakhstan market because he is from exactly Kazakhstan. And I do hope he will help you. Okay, Katerina, please.
Thank you, Irina. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending virtually our online conference devoted to the forecasts of Harvest 2020. And I'll continue our today's topic and present you the forecast by APK Inform analysts of the oilseeds production in Kazakhstan. So, we should say that the oilseeds market in Kazakhstan is developing quite dynamically. At the same time, this segment is dominated by 2 main crops. It is sunflower seeds and flaxseed. If we look at the structure of oilseeds production in the country, in 2019, these 2 crops provided 74% of the total oilseeds production in the country, against 69% in the previous season. The production of the main oilseeds crops in Kazakhstan, as well as grains, is also concentrated on the northeast of Kazakhstan. And we can observe that the division of the areas under sunflower and flaxseed. In particular, around 75% of areas of sunflower seeds are concentrated in Pavlodar and East Kazakhstan oblasts. Also, about 6% of areas are concentrated in Kostanay Oblast. Flaxseed is produced mostly in North Kazakhstan, Kostanay and Akmola Oblasts, which altogether occupy 97% of the areas under this oilseed. So the currently most favorable weather conditions for sunflower seeds production can be observed in East Kazakhstan Oblast, where, for example, last year the yield totaled 1.25 tons per hectare. The highest flaxseed yield last year was recorded in North Kazakhstan and totaled 1 ton per hectare. So thus, in oilseeds, we can see the better actually level of compliance of planting areas and yields in comparison to the segment of grains. Moving to the forecasts, the sowing areas under sunflower seeds this year can increase by 7% and total about 870 and 180,000 hectares. East Kazakhstan Oblast will remain the leading region in terms of sowing areas under sunflower seeds, and according to the forecast in this region, the oilseed can be planted on more than 480,000 hectares, which is 35% of the total areas in the oblast, among which more than 445,000 hectares for sunflower seeds. Considering the current weather conditions and also the average yield in Kazakhstan in general, the production of this oilseed in 2020 can amount to 875,000 tons. The planting areas under flaxseed this year in Kazakhstan can reach a new maximum and total around 1.3, 1.4 million hectares. Considering the average yield of flaxseed in Kazakhstan, the weather conditions, the production of this crop in 2020 can exceed 1 million tons, which is plus 22% a year. So, looking at all said before, in 2020, the total production of oilseeds in Kazakhstan will reach new maximum of 2.8 million tons, with the areas totaling about 3 million hectares, which is also the highest figure in the last decade. However, the average yield of oilseeds will not be the highest and can be 0.95 tons per hectare. So, and actually to sum up my brief report and my brief speech as I tried to do so, the production of sunflower seeds in the future season is expected at 875,000 tons, which is 9% higher per year. The production of flaxseed can exceed 1 million tons. And thus at this point, the forecast of oilseeds production in Kazakhstan is quite optimistic, and the expected production will actually allow both to fully provide the domestic demand, taking into account the development of the technical crop crushing, and to form necessary supplies for the international markets. So that's all for today from me, and now I'd like to give floor to our speaker, to Mr. Alexander Malov, the General Director of VKZ Agro Kazakhstan, who can also provide you and give you more inside information about the oilseeds market of Kazakhstan. Thank you so much. Please to Mr. Alexander. Nice to see you.
Thank you so much, Ekaterina. Thank you so much for a nice presentation about our Kazakhstan situation with oil. So production. So I agree with you that the numbers are quite realistic. It's we will see the real numbers which you shown us that will happen for sure. As for the acreage and as for the production, we don't know yet, but we believe that the moisture and the weather conditions quite well. So we believe that we will see quite nice production and very interesting production of flax seeds. So as for the yields, we believe that will be increased for 25%, but we will see the real numbers end of the May. But for sure they will be higher than previous year, and that's showing a good statistic numbers that we are growing a little bit in such kind of products. As for the sunflowers, you're right, we are also growing a little bit, but because the supply are very active now from the local markets, because the quite a lot of crushing plants are exist, and they are ready to buy all the products which we are producing in the markets. Also, we have demand from Uzbekian market, the Iranian market, and the Chinese market. As for the line seeds, I would like to say that this season we are start export to China, which give us opportunity to be more active on new market, international market. You know, everybody knows that it's one of the major import countries in the world, and thank you our government, they just achieved a solution this season with China, that we start export flax seeds to this market, and already done more than 50,000 tons this season. So what I want to say, to add to your presentation, I want to add that we expect the numbers around 700,000 ton export of flax seeds, from which we believe we will export around 250,000 ton to China market, around 200,000 ton to Belgium market, to EU market. Also, I believe that we will be active in Poland, also maybe 50-70,000 ton we will export from Kazakhstan, and also CS countries, Russia and some other our neighbor countries, we will buy around 80,000 ton from Kazakhstan. As for the rape seeds, we see the numbers we will see the numbers quite similar like last season. It will not grow because very difficult sowing campaign, harvesting campaign last year. We missed maybe 50% of the crop last season, and a lot of farmers are not interested in producing and take the risk to produce rape seeds. So in this case, in this scenario, we see that the numbers will be not significant from Kazakhstan. As for the sunflowers, you're right, we have some not grain area of production regions, so that's why we but as I mentioned, sunflowers will be covered by local markets mostly, and a little bit will be export to Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and Iran markets. So and also China for sure. China is also one of the very attractive market for our crushing plants, which using line seeds, rape seeds, and sunflower seeds, and they're using for oil and exporting mostly to China also. Thank you very much. Shortly about that.
Thank you very much for adding some comments to our presentation. And I would like to tell that focus are just focus. Harvest and focus, it's just words if we don't tell anything about prices. How this crop focus will impact exactly price trends in Ukraine in this season, in 2020. I will just ask Oleg Levchenko to explain, to share with us his thoughts about this impact of the crop focus and price trends, and he will give us much more information about trade. Okay, Oleg, are you there? Are you with us? Perfect.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for joining us. Please, I'm giving you a word. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Just shortly about myself. For those who don't know me, I started business activity in agriculture in 1996. And I've been in grain trading since 1998. I did a couple of investments into farming. So I'm both sides, it's close to me. Procurement, origination and trading, as well as farming and agronomy. First of all, I have to say a few words not about trading, but about the situation with the weather from my point of view and the point of view of agronomists all over the Ukraine. If you would like to understand what is the real situation with the moisture, with the precipitation, especially after unprecedented winter like we had, then you have to go to cemetery to see how the diggers digged the hole, and you can trace the horizon in between up and down, and if the horizon matched with the water, then everything is fine. Well, I wouldn't suggest to go everyone to the cemetery, but the situation was really horrible this winter, and the horizons didn't match on the fields. And 3 weeks ago, everybody was worrying, would we have finally a good crop or not? So today we have. I have to admit that the quality of rains was really, really good. Some regions, it was from 5 to 10 millimeters per 24 hours. Then rainfall stopped and then repeated within 2-3 days. So soil saturated in really proper agronomical way. In the center of Ukraine, precipitation dropped like 35 to 55 millimeters during these 3 weeks. On the west, 40 to 65, which is over the 2 monthly norms. Eastern North, 30 to 50, and North, 40 to 55. The only southern Ukraine is still suffering of drought, because some regions down to Odessa and Kherson and Zaporizhia, up to Donetsk and partially Lugansk Oblast, still less than 15 millimeters, which is significantly low. Other thing that bear in mind the situation with the crop protection. I've spoken to several distribution companies of the chemicals, and they said that the demand quite low for insecticides and fungicides. With such a warm winter we had, it should be way, way higher. So we will have issues with the quality, with the bug damage, and with the fungus problem. I have to admit that fertilizer usage was higher than last year in the tones, in the volumes. So it will make it makes us to believe that crop will be still okay. I want to share just my supply and demand balances. So shortly with the barley, I do believe that the harvested area will be not to 2,055,000, but I have to follow the rumors that farmers has planted a bit higher acreage, taking into consideration bad situation on the southern Ukraine. So I have to follow rumors as an expert or just a market participant. But I really do not believe that the yield will exceed 2.8 tons per hectare. So my figure, 7.1 million tons of production which is still optimistic for myself. We would see 3.250 or even less barley export from Ukraine. Best regards to guys who sold barley to Saudi Arabia. We might see a big run for the barley, especially Holboot and others. Also taking into consideration situation with the Australian demarche regarding China issue, COVID-19, etc. Then we might see higher demand from Chinese. It would be most probably French or just European barley, maybe Romanian, I'm not sure. But anyway, it will occur on the demand from Ukraine. So it's good for us, for Russia as well. So let's stick with the export of 3.2 million tons. Wheat. I'm quite close to a figure with APK Inform of 25 million tons. They shown 24.5. I'm arguing as well that situation on the south is really bad. Up to 150 kilometers from south to north. In the conversation with the holdings agronomists, they said that even in the center of Ukraine, due to frost on March, the roots of plants didn't develop quite well. So you can trace on the fields that plants are green and looks very nice. But if you take it off, you will see that the root system is not in proper way as it should be during the winter. It means that it has a lot of diseases. It means that the sugars during the winter time were used not in proper way. I mean, there was a development of plants during the winter time. So I have to say that I'm more keen to 24 million tons of production than 25, but I have to follow the market rules. So we stay with the 25 million tons of production so far, taking into consideration higher usage of fertilizers. I see export around 17 million tons. Then corn, it's still a good issue because of the weather right now. It's quite brilliant regarding the moisture, but it's quite complicated regarding the temperatures. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees during the night, during the last week and upcoming week as well. And by the end of May, it still be like that. There will be 16, 15, 17 degrees during daytime and 6, 7, 8 degrees. But hopefully during the next month, June, it will be way higher. So I would stay with my production figure of almost 38 million tons. With the 32 million tons of export. How it will occur prices? I'm not a prophet. Otherwise, I would sit either in church or somewhere on Bali or other islands. But definitely, if the situation in the world will not change, then we will see declining the prices further on for Ukrainian corn. Shortly, sunflower seeds is going up. Situation is quite well, no threat. So 15.5 million tons production is quite visible, even higher. It might be even higher because of acreage. We are not sure. I'm not sure that the acreage is correct of 6.2 million tons planted because of the situation with southern region of Ukraine. I don't believe they will plant soybean instead of sunflower seeds. Rapes, I am pessimistic regarding rapes. Maybe I'm the most pessimistic regarding the rape seed situation. Temperature is low, water is not enough before, and it was also heated by the frost during the March. So my crop figure 2.9 million tons of production with the export of 2.4 million tons. If Europe would need our rapeseeds today or next months because of the situation with the oil and petrol. Soybean, again, I'm not sure that the acreage will be that much as appointed by APK On. So my figure is 3.6, and yield is not in favor of soybean, especially at this stage of development. So I am pessimistic, and I see export of 2.2 million tons. This year is quite complicated to see what is going on to be with the prices, because we haven't seen such a volatility in between milling wheat and feed stuff. So I wouldn't be the smartest guy in this world to predict the prices. My feeling that feed stuff has to going down, and good quality milling wheat is going up. I'm done so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oleg. If you have some minutes for us, we have some questions, as you can see, about prices and focus of prices. It's not so easy to focus the prices for November or October time. And if you can look on the questions, can you do it? People are asking about which sheet again. I think they will get it after the conference, not to disturb you again. And also for some, where is the market for new crop corn in the Black Sea, offers and bids, some expectations, if you can just tell them. And also some other questions. You see there?
Okay, yeah, just a second.
Okay.
There was a question just to share the...
Which sheet again, because people just asking some figures.
Yeah, just a second.
Okay.
Just a second. Yep, here it is. Mm-hmm. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So we just showing the which sheet. I think if someone just can make print screen, for example, of your figures, but these are your just focus exactly of the independent experts.
What are your expectations for October-November timeframe?
Mm-hmm.
Just we can follow the CBUT, nothing else. I wouldn't go in any indication so far. Honestly.
What price bottom for wheat as well as sunflower do you see in the season 2021?
Bottom price for wheat, I don't think it's going down. Well, if you're discussing 11.5 or 12.5, then it shouldn't be lower than 190, 195 FOB Black Sea. A bit higher for Russian 12.5. for sunflower seeds. Well, we are not experts in sunflower seeds, so it makes no sense to answer these questions, because Ukraine last year, as far as I remember, it was exported only 18,000 tons. Most probably it was organic sunflower seeds, not conventional.
Okay, also, I see here the question about exchange rate in 6 months. I think it's not the question to us. Not exactly.
Well, I'm not a gambler on Forex. I think
even Forex doesn't know what will be the exchange rate of Ukrainian hryvnia.
Well, bear in mind the COVID-19 situation. Look, we are dependent on our people who used to work in Europe. So if government will not let people go to work, then we will have an issues. Then we might see 30, 35 hryvnias per dollar. It's quite doubtful. I don't think there are a lot of suicides people in president administration whatsoever. But I feel they will get the funds from IMF. Should be higher than 30 hryvnias.
Yes, it will depend. We'll see, but it will be not higher than 30 years. And the last question, I think it's just, I've heard before about some labor issues in other countries because of this pandemic COVID-19. What can you tell about Ukraine? As I see in the fields, there are no any farming issues just because of this pandemic. What can you add?
Look, I can tell you, yeah, that was Aditya. We are lacking of highly professional, skilled people. That is true in the farming business. We do not need workers that much as it was before. So, for instance, 1990, 1995, the collective farms, a farm of 3,000 hectares, for instance, there was about 700, 800 people used to work over there. So we are approaching now the model of Brazil, Argentina, or United States, when 1,500, 2,000 hectares can serve of in Ukraine rather 15 to 20 people, because of technologies, because of modern techniques, machinery, and so on. The highly educated people is still an issue. So we rely on old school people. It's going to change. It is changing because many private holdings, they have educational centers. So I do believe that the labor market will be saturated quite soon with the highly professional Ukrainians. We do not need the experts. And especially with the new land law on private ownership, 2 to 3 years, 4 years, we will have enough people who can manage local station for GPS in the Caterpillar tractor or John Deere tractor, etc. So on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Thanks everyone for joining us in this online conference. I just want to thank on behalf of APK Inform. And if I see maybe someone added some questions, I don't know. Okay, as for some racial wheat, our analysts will inform maybe in some personal or private answers not to take your time, because we have even more than 20 minutes more than we expected to have. And I believe that this year will be again interesting for everyone. And in our next online conference. For this time only online. It will be Grain and Maritime Days conference, which was expected to be at the end of May, 27th up to 29th of May in Odessa. But we will make an online, this conference in online. We will send everyone the invitation, and then if our government allows us to hold the conference not in online, we will meet you in Odessa in August. Hope to see you again in our emails, in our website. You will be informed about all our plans for this year, about all our focus and conferences and all other information. Thank you again, and you will get a link with some questions. Please give us 1 or 2 minutes to give us the answers of this. And thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.